Hi everyone, I'm here in the Wetherill Vineyard in Coonawarra. So this is where Bellwether Coonawarra Cabernet comes from. So I started taking this fruit in 2009, was the first vintage, and the vineyard was looked after by Mike and Brent Wetherill. So it was planted by them and his dad Tim, and this block, Banamboo block, was named after a young girl that Tim and Kay met on their honeymoon, a young Aboriginal girl that they were quite taken by, which I found out well after I'd chosen this block. When I was looking for fruit to make Bellwether Cabernet, I just wanted to find some really high quality fruit, and I'd got talking to Mike at the swim carnival that the Penola Swim Club had, and then we came out and looked through some various blocks. Mike, a very clever grower, was selling to quite a few different companies, and some of the really big names, you know, Orlando, what was then probably South Cork is now Treasury, but then a few little players like myself as well, and was always a really clever grower in that we all make different styles of wine, and we had different ways that we kind of wanted to see the fruit managed. And I always applaud Mike and Brent how they managed to look after every single part of their vineyard to make it right for those winemakers. And I think that's the beauty of wine. You know, you can recognise Coonawarra Cabernet straight away from the nose. It has such a distinctive, that lovely almost chalk mint, but a really unique aromatic that kind of screams that it can't be from anywhere else in the world. But then the same vineyard in different winemakers' hands or different viticultural practices can taste quite different, and I think that's what makes it all fun. So this block that we're on, you probably can't see too well, but if we pan over that way and up high, you can see this is the Swiss Alps of Coonawarra. It's the high country, and it's nosebleed territory. So Coonawarra, for anyone that's been here, is a pretty flat place, but this is quite elevated, and it seems to ripen earlier. And I used to think that I was going a little bit mad when I'd be thinking that I wanted to pick it, and no one else had, you know, really picked many reds at all, let alone Cabernet. And I'd drag other winemakers out with me, Pete Weinberg from Brands, or other people, to say, "Oh, I think the Cabernet's ready," you know, and he'd go, "You're nuts." And so we'd come out and taste it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it looks really good." And there's been research done by numerous people, but particularly some of the biggest landholders in the district treasury, who grow fruit for Penfolds and of course Wynn's Coonawarra Estate. And they've done some great research showing that some of that higher country does in fact ripen earlier, even in more southern vineyards. So this is what I call kind of the upper east side, so slightly northeast of the tiny township. We're opposite Penley Estate, and Mike used to manage the vineyards for Penley Estate back then as well. And once upon a time they had their own label, so some of you may remember the Wetherills label, and that was they were beautiful wines. And I sometimes have people say to me, "I used to really love Wetherills and I like your wine," and so perhaps it's that sense of place that they're tasting. But in 2009, Mike and Brent were very kind to me. I didn't have any money starting a label. They knew how hard that could be because they'd done it in the past and then decided to focus on grape growing. And they gave me quite extended payment terms to help me get off the ground, and let me use one of their insulated sheds for storage, and it really did help me start my business, and I am forever grateful for that. So when a couple of years ago Mike rang me mid-vintage, we'd already done the first hand pick for our Cabernet, to say that he had some news in that he had sold his vineyard, I was a little bit concerned, but I thought, "Oh, well, congratulations, Mike, that's great. You know, you and Brent and your dad have worked really bloody hard, and you've been smart and clever, so you deserve to do well if someone else wants to give you some reward for all that hard work." So I don't think we've seen the last of Mike Wetherill. He's now working for the people that bought his vineyard. And this is one of those good news stories we're always kind of banging on: buy local, buy small. And we say, you know, small is better. Well, my foundation was working in big companies. I worked for some of the biggest wine companies in the world, and it was an incredible experience. Really well resourced and lots of people to learn from, and cellars of wines dating back to the 60s, you know. And so that as an education for me was phenomenal. So my first job out of uni was a graduate program with South Court Wines, and then now I'm standing in a vineyard that has been purchased by Treasury Wine Estates, and Treasury don't go buying vineyards to then sell it to some tiny little producer like me, but in the negotiations with Mike and then people on the ground here like Alan Jenkins, they decided that diversity and that sense of community in Coonawarra was really important to support, and so I am really lucky to still buy this fruit each year. And so I've got 2 labels that come from this vineyard. So big shout out to Mike and to Alan, but also to the other people within that company, you know, Ben Harris, Nick Bavistock, you know, Sharman, you know, amazing supporters with the local community, whether it's the swim club or other things. And then in the winery, Sue, Sarah and Brett, you know, they are not just big company winemakers. They make wines with a real purpose, lots of beautiful individual vineyard wines, and have access to some incredible fruit, and those vineyards are really well looked after now. So it's a treasure chest of what's in Coonawarra. So there's my shout out to the big guys. For my little site that I take fruit from here, I've got 2 wines. So one, if you come in here, so we've obviously picked this a while ago. This is the Bellwether Ant Series Coonawarra Cabernet. And so that one's my attempt at making a Coonawarra Cabernet that'll is a bit more approachable young, which is a bit of an oxymoron because they do live forever. But that one we do whole berry, a little bit of whole bunch, trying to be really soft with the tannins, and then just old oak. So that's your weekday Coonawarra Cabernet. But then on the weekends, or when in COVID lockdown, facing the apocalypse, this is the Cabernet that you should try, and that's our special high-end one. The 2015 is an exceptional vintage, and it's part of the deal that we've got this week. So that's life from autumnal Coonawarra, and this lovely block. If we look down here on the ground, I'll show you a little bit of the soil. You know, Coonawarra is famed for its terra rossa soils. In here we can see some of that red, and then you can see also there's bits of stone, ironstone. Some of my favourite vineyard blocks have ironstone in them. And then you can see little bits of sand and things as well. So this would be more transitional country than classic terra rossa. And I find that this transitional high country gives more aromatic and finer grain tannins. So in my time in bigger companies in the past, they were some of my favourite blocks. That's why I was interested in this one. Then if we just wander over here on the ground, we've got something from somewhere else. My goodness, it's some things from Tasmania. So now I'm going to get out of here and we're going to cross through the powers of modern technology to Tasmania. So I'll log out, and if you hold on, soon on the Facebook page we'll be in the Bundelira Vineyard in Tasmania. Bye-bye.